true paranormal story.
Nobody's ever gonna believe this. What the heck did I just see? Started seeing ghosts when I was only 8 years old. I saw that boy disappear.
This isn't real. Welcome to the Raker'z Dozen. Raker'z Dozen. Okay, so here's another story from the apartments off Highland while living with my buddy. We both knew after the first night he stayed there, some ish was about to go down. I just knew the energy in the apartment was ramping up, and it was only a matter of time before things started happening. And I was right. After we heard pounding on the doors the first night my buddy moved in, we talked about it. I let him know the other apartment I lived in within the same complex, we experienced some weird things when living with my girlfriend. So it wouldn't surprise me if we start to experience things here. My buddy almost disregarded what I said. Not that he didn't believe me, it felt more like he just didn't want to hear it. For so many years, he thought I made up all the stories about the house he grew up in. Maybe he didn't want to acknowledge those stories were real. Things stayed calm for a few months, and although the apartment had a weird energy to it, nothing noticeable happened. And one day I was home alone and didn't have my son with me. It was in the middle of the week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. I honestly have no idea where my buddy was, but I'm pretty sure he was at work that morning. I made some breakfast and watched the morning news for like an hour. And then I decided to get ready to go run some errands. And so I jumped in the shower. As soon as I started washing my hair and closed my eyes, I hear something. It was very faint. And at first I wasn't too sure since I was rinsing my hair and the water was hitting me in the face, but it was loud enough to get my attention. I thought maybe I left the living room TV on or something, and even figured maybe it's even my downstairs neighbors. Those guys were loud and always had something going on. But I really tried to focus on what sounded like singing. I froze in my tracks. Wait, that singing sounds like a little girl. And for a brief moment, I remembered the downstairs neighbor did have a daughter, and I think she was about 8 or 9. But I immediately started realizing if it was downstairs, it would sound muffled. And this sounds clear. So I just kept rinsing off my hair, but now the singing is getting louder. And it sounds like it's coming from inside the bathroom, like on the other side of the shower curtain. I stop and listen for a few seconds. It's definitely a child singing, but it sounds like it's right next to me and it's getting louder. So I quickly turned off the shower and stood still. The singing stopped. I stood there for about 20 seconds just listening, and I didn't hear anything. No TV playing, no child singing, nothing. So now I'm starting to get the feeling that something isn't right, and that all too familiar rapid heart rate kicked in. Something is wrong. I turn the shower back on and immediately hear the singing again. And now I know it's coming from inside my bathroom. You ever see that moment in a horror film where they're about to quickly swat the shower curtains open, hoping to catch whatever's there? That's exactly what I knew I had to do. So I took a deep breath and opened the shower curtain quickly and yelled, "Who's there? Who's there? Who's there?" Nothing. And now I'm getting a little nervous. I've seen apparitions, but I've never heard one singing and interacting with me. This put the scare factor to like an 8 out of 10 for me. I quickly finished the shower and went into the room. I got ready and sat on the bed for about 10 minutes just hoping I'd hear the singing coming from downstairs or something, so I could laugh at myself for overreacting, but that didn't happen. I finally got up and grabbed my keys to head out, and just before I closed the front door, I softly said, "It's happening. It's happening. It's happening." I'm not really sure what else to say after hearing the girl singing in the shower. It scared the shit out of me. I'm not joking. This experience really rattled me. And I think most experiences with children apparitions are deeply unsettling to me. But good thing for me, that was the first and only time I heard the girl singing in the shower. For now. Okay, so here's another story that happened in my friend's house where I saw the boy in red. This story took place about a year later after that experience. Things kind of settled down, and although I still had some strange experiences, they were always small things. Like the usual things getting moved or noises or sounds in the house. Nothing notable or even worth mentioning. But on this day, that changed. It was 1991, and every moment I wasn't in school, I was at my buddy's house, even during the week. So I was always there. But on some weekends, we rode the bus to the Santa Fe Springs Mall, which, by the way, doesn't exist anymore. But just like the kids in the 90s, we'd head to the mall and hang out, play some Street Fighter 2 at the arcade, grab some food, and do what they now call people watching. To be young again. It was a Saturday morning and we planned to go to the mall. I got up early, walked up the street to my buddy's house, and I used to just knock on the door and walk in, and so I did. When I walked inside the house, it was quiet. Eerily quiet. There was always TVs on and music playing or kids running around. Always. But today, the house was absolutely quiet, which I found strange. I said, "Hello? Hello?" But nobody responded. As I walked in, I could hear the shower running, so I decided to sit down in the living room and just wait for him to get ready, so we can head out later on. And of course, I helped myself to some chips and soda while waiting. All the blinds were closed, so the living room was really dark. They're normally open during the day, and then his family closes them at night. I guess no one opened them this morning. I started looking around for the remote so I can watch some TV. And from behind me, I heard footsteps running from the front door directly into the kitchen. I quickly whipped around, startled, expecting to see one of my buddy's nephews, but no one was there. Just like before, I felt my heartbeat quicken. I could feel it pounding in my chest. I slowly started walking up the steps into the dining area cautiously. I nervously said, "Is somebody here? Is somebody here?" Nobody responded. I took a few more steps, getting closer to the kitchen, and now my heart is pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I slowly stepped into the kitchen, and nobody was there. Freaked out, I knocked on the bathroom door, still hearing the shower running. My buddy yelled, "What? I'm in the shower." And so I replied, "Hey, did you get out of the shower and walk to the kitchen right now?" And being my best friend, he responded with, "I'm in the effing shower. How the hell would I get out and walk to the kitchen? I'll be done in a few minutes. Just then, the thought occurred to me. Maybe his older sister is home and I just didn't realize it. So I walked down the hall and knocked on her door and waited. No response. And so I knocked again, and I finally decided to open the door slowly. Yep, and you guessed it, nobody was there. So I closed the door and decided to head back to the living room. By now, I'm just rationalizing that I probably just heard the house settling or some other ridiculous excuse. And so I walked down the stairs into the living room and sat down on the couch. I say F it, I'm just gonna watch TV while I wait for my buddy. And just then, I hear the footsteps run from the kitchen right back to the front door. I jump up and run to the front door searching for who the hell just ran in the house again. But there was no one. By now, I'm freaking the F out. Just as I was about to leave the house and just go home, my buddy comes out of the shower, dressed, and asks what's going on. Like I'm fumbling with my words, and I must have sounded like I was going crazy. I said, "Someone ran from the front door to the kitchen, and then just a few minutes later, it ran from the kitchen right back to the front door." He started laughing at me and making fun of me. He said, "Bro, let me put my shoes on and let's just get out of here and head to the mall." And so we did. But for the rest of the day, I couldn't let it go. The sound of the footsteps just bothered me. I'm pretty sure that it was a child's footsteps. Don't ask me how I know. They sounded lighter, not as heavy. And I asked myself, was it the boy in red? Was it another spirit? Honestly, I never found out. And I never heard them again. But I could still hear those footsteps. In my dreams. It was 2017 and I'm married to my best friend, and now we're a blended family. I had an older son from a prior relationship, and she had kids from a prior marriage, and then we had our youngest son together. Life was pretty good, and so we planned a vacation trip to Big Bear for the kids. Now, if you don't know where Big Bear is, it's located in Southern California, and it had become a place our kids loved to visit every summer. I can't remember exactly if this trip was our second or third time visiting, but I do remember this trip I decided to book an upgraded cabin that was beautiful, with a pool table upstairs, a beautiful deck and backyard. You can tell they just refurnished this place, and man, it was amazing. We were so excited. But I should have known on the way up, this would be a trip to remember. So it was late August and at least 90 degrees on our way up the mountain when there was some type of accident. So we ended up getting stuck on the mountain for about 2.5 hours. No water, my AC wasn't working, the kids were upset and crying. It was good times. Have kids, they said. It'll be fun, they said. After what seemed like a lifetime, we eventually made it to the cabin. And honestly, I was just relieved we got there in one piece. Our youngest son, who was 3 at the time, was really throwing a fit. He was tired, cranky, and throwing himself on the floor. Poor little guy was just exhausted, hungry, and frustrated. But as we started unloading the car, I finally had enough of it and decided to put him on timeout. I used to do this in our home from time to time when he was throwing tantrums. The rest of the family continued unloading the car while I took our little guy inside and had him sit down to the left of the front door, close to the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Although I was frustrated with him, I tried to stay calm and I said, "Look, Papa, I need you to be a good boy, okay? Stay right here until we finish unpacking, and then I'll make you something to eat, okay? I'll make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with the juice." He shook his head and said, "Okay, Daddy." I got up and went back outside, and while everyone was bringing in the luggage and groceries, I heard him scream. I dropped the bags and bolted into the cabin with my wife following right behind me. He was screaming hysterically as if somebody slapped him. It really startled me. We both frantically scrambled to pick him up, thinking maybe he somehow got hurt. What's wrong? What's wrong? What happened?" He clung to me, shaking. I looked at my wife, confused and now terrified. "What the hell's going on?" I thought. "Papa, what happened?" He stared into my eyes, afraid. Keep in mind, he's only 3 years old. But he looked over his left shoulder, trembling, almost terrified to look down the hallway. As he was shaking, he started pointing and said, "The skeleton man. The skeleton man, Daddy." My wife and I look at each other confused. "Who's the skeleton man?" I asked. And he just points down the hallway, terrified. "Did he go down the hallway?" And he shook his head, yes. He was still crying out of fear. My heart rate started pumping, and my fatherly instincts kicked in to protect my kids. I jumped up and I decided I was going to investigate the rooms. Keep in mind, we literally just walked in, so no one had even looked around the cabin or any of the rooms. So I slowly started searching each room at a time, making sure no one was hiding in any of the rooms. "Hello? Hello? Hello? Who's there? Who's there? Who's there? Show yourself! Show yourself! Show yourself!" Not gonna lie, my heart was pounding in my chest. I really thought someone might be in the house. If you know, California squatters are real. I finished checking all the rooms and the bathrooms, but I didn't find anyone. When I came back to the living room, our son had calmed down and the other kids were asking questions about what happened. I just said, "Hey guys, your little brother just got scared, but he's okay. Why don't you guys go put your stuff away in the rooms and check out the game room upstairs?" The moment I said game room, they all ran upstairs and completely forgot about what just happened. I looked at my wife and we both had that "what the f*** is happening" look on our faces. But we both knew something was here. We both felt it. My only thought was, do you know how much I paid for this f***ing cabin? And now we have a skeleton man walking around. What next? The rest of the day was fine. We hung out, barbecued, played games with the kids, and really had fun with them. I remember we sat out on the patio and just enjoyed the view. Kind of forgot about what happened earlier in the day. But later that night, we were in bed, we started talking about what happened. We both knew our little guy had never reacted like that before. And honestly, I didn't even know he knew the word skeleton. She asked me, "What do you think happened?" I'm not really sure, but he definitely saw something. And I know he can sense and see things ever since he was a baby. I just never seen him react out of fear. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know. Just then we heard a loud thud in the hallway. We both sat up in bed. I mean, it sounded like some type of heavy bag or something. I immediately thought it sounded like a military duffel bag, and then we heard it start to drag slowly towards the living room for about 10 seconds. We both looked at each other, terrified. "It's probably the kids." I looked at her like she lost her damn mind. We both knew it wasn't the kids. But I guess at the moment we both were just trying to rationalize it. First our son sees a skeleton man, and now it sounds like someone's dragging a dead body down the hallway. Did we rent the fucking Amityville house? I thought. "Go see what it is," she said. I nodded my head, got up slowly, started looking for anything I could use as a weapon. And I remember I had a knife in my pants pocket, which were laying near the bed. So I grabbed it. By now that dragging sound was in the living room, and I opened the door slowly, and it was pitch black. I could see some light coming in from the living room front windows and the kitchen, but looking down the hallway, the kids' rooms were closed. I slowly started creeping down the hallway and noticed as I walked on the wood floors, the creaking was loud. But we didn't hear the wood creaking while something was being dragged down the hallway. I slowly turned the corner and glanced into the living room, then looked to the left, which was the kitchen. Nothing. Started looking around for the light to turn on. And now that I could see, I looked around the cabin, checked all the doors, and everything was fine. I turned off the lights and walked back to check on the kids. I opened their doors and they were all asleep. My oldest son woke up. "What's going on, Dad?" "Nothing, everything's okay. I was just checking in on you guys. I thought I heard you guys talking in here, but it was probably the neighbors." He just shook his head and laid back down. I walked back into the bedroom and got in the bed. "What happened?" "Nothing. There wasn't anything out there and the kids are all asleep." "I'm scared," she said. I didn't tell her then, but I could be honest about it now. I was scared. I was scared shitless. The thought of an intruder while my family was here is scary enough, and I was willing to do whatever it took to protect them. But a haunted cabin? The fuck am I supposed to do then? I guess the only thing I knew how in the moment. I prayed. We eventually fell back to sleep. The next morning, the kids got up and everyone was excited for the day. They were already in the living room hanging out and talking about the trip. My wife got up and went to the kitchen to start breakfast. Our little guy was still asleep, so I woke him up, and he was happy, all smiles, and he hugged me. So I picked him up and carried him in my left arm. And just as we walked out of the bedroom into the hallway, I felt him shaking. I stopped and looked at his face. He was staring out towards the kitchen. "What's wrong? What do you see?" He lifts his little finger and points to the kitchen. "The skeleton man, Daddy. The skeleton man, Daddy. The skeleton man, Daddy." I always knew my son could see things. I sometimes found him staring at the walls, laughing, smiling, or pointing. I mean, if I could see things just like many of my family members can, I knew there's a chance that he'd be able to as well. But seeing him terrified brought back a lot of memories of my first experiences as a child, and that really pissed me off. While the kids were eating breakfast, I walked back into the hallway and did my usual ritual to try and protect my kids and asking the spirit to leave kindly. Sometimes sugar works better than vinegar. And the rest of the trip, we didn't have any more experiences. Well, at least on that trip. I don't think I'll ever be able to erase the look of terror in my son's eyes from my memory. I just hope he doesn't experience things like I do. Being a dad changes things, and I'll fiercely protect them against the natural and supernatural with everything I have inside. Let me ask you guys, have you ever seen an apparition? I'm always curious about what other people's experiences were like seeing a ghost for the first time. Well, today you're gonna hear my first experience seeing a physical presence in my buddy's house. Just another story from La Docena Lane where I grew up. So get comfortable, relax, and get ready for a story that changed my life. And just as a reminder, if you have a paranormal story that you'd like to share, please email me at rakersdozen@gmail.com. Now let's get into it. This is another story about what I experienced at my buddy's home. Like I mentioned in a previous episode, he lived up the street from me. We've known each other since the second grade, I believe. And we are still friends almost 38 years later. But I did want to mention his house began feeling a little darker and darker as the years passed by. More and more incidents started happening to me. It's almost like the house recognized that I felt something was off inside of it. And the spirits and other darker entities began showing themselves more and more as the years rolled by. It started with maybe once or twice a year I would experience something. And within 7 years, it was happening monthly and even weekly sometimes. But I wanted to share the first time I physically saw a spirit in his home. So let me share, I was absolutely a skeptic. And in many ways, I still am. But I do feel this experience was the one that opened doors and emboldened other spirits in that home to show themselves to me. I can't tell you why or how I know this, only that the frequency of experiences seemed to escalate after seeing the boy in red. So here we go. It was a typical Friday night of a 12-year-old in the 90s. Chips, snacks, video games, music, watching horror films, and stealing some beers from my friend's dad as he left for work. Those were the days. No responsibility. On this night, we were up late watching some horror films. I don't remember which one. More than likely, it was like the original Amityville or something like that. On a side note, we used to be able to get rated R horror flicks at the local Video Galaxy down the street in Santa Fe Springs. The owner's son always hooked us up. I can say that now because we all know what happened to the video stores. Damn you, Netflix. It was about 11:30 p.m. and we were hanging out in the living room. Our friend's mom already went to bed and everyone else in the house was asleep. My buddy asked me if I could check the calendar next to the kitchen and see if he had a dental visit the next morning. I had to take a leak anyway, so I just got up, talked some crap as young men do, and walked up the 2 steps leading towards the dining area, right next to the kitchen. So I made it to the kitchen, looked at the calendar, and then noticed that he didn't have an appointment scheduled the next morning. But before I had a chance to yell out that he didn't have an appointment, I noticed some movement in my peripheral vision to the right of me. You know that feeling when you can see something even though you're not looking directly at it? And so I whipped my head to the right quickly, and for a brief second, I saw a young boy standing there in my buddy's bedroom door. He looked like he was about 7 or 8 years old, wearing a bright red shirt and blue jeans. And when I blinked, he was gone. I felt my heart start beating really fast. Something I've learned to recognize as my body telling me something's wrong or off. Still confused, I began walking towards my friend's bedroom looking for the child. My friend yelled out, "Do I have an appointment tomorrow or what?" And it kind of snapped me out of the trance that I was in. Still looking around for the boy in red, I walked downstairs back into the living room. He asked me again if he had an appointment, and I responded, "No." I could feel that moment playing over and over in my head, just trying to rationalize what the hell did I just see. I finally told my buddy, "I just saw a little boy wearing a red shirt near your room." He started laughing at me, telling me I'm buzzed and I don't know what I'm talking about. And even I thought maybe those 2 beers I drank had me seeing things, but wait, I know what I saw. It was getting late, so we just decided to go to bed for the night. He went to his room and I slept on the couch in the living room. It was about 3 a.m. when I woke up. I needed to use the restroom really bad. But I felt like someone was watching me. You know that feeling, something just isn't right? When I glanced towards my buddy's room, and I saw him. The same boy in red was leaning on the banister, staring at me. Almost like a tired child doing homework at a table and falling asleep laying on their hands. I sat up quickly, and he was gone. Once again, my heart was racing. I got up and looked for the little boy, but he was gone. Eventually, I sat back down on the couch for the first time, feeling scared. What's happening to me? Am I losing my mind? Seeing the same boy twice in the same night wasn't some trick of light, or the result of 2 beers when I saw him 3 to 4 hours apart. I felt like the house was alive or something, that's trying to tell me something. The following morning, I told my friend about what happened. And you guessed it, he just laughed. He told me I'm just seeing things that aren't real. And after talking with his sister later on, I found out that she experienced so many things in that house. And over the next 7 years, I continued experiencing strange things in that home. But I never saw that little boy again. Seeing the boy in red rattled me. Seeing an apparition for the first time is scary enough, but for it to be a little boy. I remember asking his family if a little boy ever died there, but they didn't really know. And back then in the 90s, the internet was still relatively new, so there wasn't a quick way to just do a Google search. And I eventually just let it go. Things are getting a little creepier and creepier with my experiences. And now that I'm a little older and finally have my own place, I quickly learned they, meaning the spirits, follow me wherever I live. What's different about this story is up until this point of my life, all the paranormal things were happening directly to me. And this experience changed that. My girlfriend who moved in with me, who never experienced any paranormal activity, became the target of the spirits. And they wanted to make sure that she knew they were there. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Alright, now let's get into it. This story takes place in 2007 in Fullerton, California, while living in an apartment off Highland Avenue. Everything that you could think of was literally across the street where I live. Retail shops, restaurants, Costco, movie theaters. Super convenient, and I loved living there. And the apartment complex we lived in did give off some weird vibes, but it didn't bother me. I've experienced paranormal things most of my life, so I felt right at home. At the time, I was living with my girlfriend, who'd also become my future ex-wife. Save that story for a rainy day. But just a little backstory, we met at work. I have to admit, she caught my eye immediately, and one thing led to another. You know how that goes. But at the time, life was pretty good. I was working hard, trying to get promoted with hopes and dreams of buying my first home someday. My girlfriend was much younger than me and still in college. She was a student athlete and played volleyball. She was super talented and a beast on the court. Now, I had already been living in this complex for about a year when my girlfriend moved in with me. And from the very beginning, she mentioned she felt a coldness in the apartment. I don't mean from poor insulation, but she said the apartment feels like it had a dark presence or something. Now, I already knew that, but I never said anything about it. I don't think I had told her my history of paranormal experiences yet. And at the time, I was working early mornings at 2 a.m. These were the worst 2 years of my life, working that shift, by the way. But I got up, showered, packed my lunch, kissed my girl goodbye, and headed out for work. And while driving to work, I received a text message from my girlfriend telling me to have a good day at work. When I got to work, I already knew it was going to be a rough night. I was running the overnight stock team. It was a huge truck. So I got the team started and went to make a pot of coffee because I was gonna need it. A few hours later, my phone started ringing. Like, who the hell's calling me at 4:23 a.m.? I pulled the phone out of my pocket and I noticed it was my girlfriend. I immediately knew something was wrong. And I walked towards somewhere with a little more privacy. I answered the phone. Before I even said hello, she blurts out, "The fucking bed is shaking." Confused, I say, "What do you mean the bed is shaking?" It started off very subtle, but enough to wake her up. She instantly thought it was an earthquake. After all, we live in California. So she sat up in bed, and the shaking stopped briefly. Long enough for her to think maybe she was dreaming. And as she laid back down, the bed violently started shaking so hard she could feel the legs being lifted up off the ground and slam back down. She said it went on for about 20 seconds, and she was so terrified she couldn't speak or she couldn't scream. The moment the bed stopped shaking is when she called me frantically. She told me, "You need to come home now." I can't come home now, but I'll wait until the next manager comes in and then I'll tell them that I have a family emergency or something. "No, please come home now." I just tried to calm her and reassure her. So I said, "Turn on the TV in the bedroom, the bathroom light near the bedroom, and if you're brave enough, turn on the lights in the living room and just stay in the bedroom." Of course, she just begged me to come home. I let her know that if she did this, it should stop it long enough for me to get home. Confused, my girlfriend asked, "How do you know this?" "I'll explain later when I get home." At 7 o'clock, the next manager came in and I told him some BS story that my girlfriend was extremely sick and I needed to go home. And so I just left. And when I got home, she ran from the bedroom trembling. And for the first time in my life, I thought, oh, this is how other people react to this stuff. In pure terror. But because I've experienced it my entire life, it doesn't affect me like that. I hugged her and held her for about 10 minutes while she cried. And when she calmed down, I asked her to go grab us some donuts and coffee. She looked at me like I was crazy and asked, "Why?" I looked her straight in her eyes and said, "Because I need to ask the spirit to leave." "What?" she said. "Your fear is feeding it right now, and that's what it wants. Whatever's been here is now comfortable enough to make itself known to you. So if you just grab some coffee and donuts, I'll take care of it." And so she left. I had picked up a method along the way of handling situations like this. I just never actually did it. A few years ago, I worked with someone who noticed that I could see and feel paranormal stuff, and she told me that I have a lot of white light, and that this white light is like a flashlight in a dark tunnel, almost like a beacon for spirits who are lost or those who want to torment. And this coworker told me something to remember and to use it if I ever feel in danger or threatened by a spirit. And so I stood in the middle of the apartment and recited the phrase she taught me. "You were not welcome, nor were you invited into this home. Take some of my white light and find your way to heaven. You're not welcome here, and it's time for you to leave." I repeated this over and over as I began saging the apartment, which honestly, I've never done before. And every 5 minutes, I'd also add a personal prayer. So my girlfriend came home in about 20 minutes, and when she walked in, she noticed the apartment felt lighter. She bombarded me with questions like, how did I know to keep the TV on? How did I know to sage the apartment? And I finally just told her the truth. That since I was 8 years old, I've experienced paranormal things. And whatever was here was not here because of us, but more likely one of the other apartments, but became attached to her for whatever reason. But it's gone now. She just hugged me and said thank you. And I continued living in that apartment until about 2013. I never told her, but that experience helped me realize that no matter where I live, they would follow. What would you do if your bed started shaking like in the movie Exorcist? You know, while writing this episode, there was one thing I couldn't fully explain, and that's how the fear in her voice scared me to the core. It was that deep-rooted fear that she was begging me to come home. It still haunts me. That in itself was really scary. And I often wonder if that apartment had anything to do with how our relationship imploded and we eventually divorced. I started saging more and more often, but like many people will tell you, it only works for a while and the activity eventually returned. Do you want to hear one last story from the Highland Apartments? Okay, fine. So after a few years, my buddy and I needed to move on. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I was trying to save my failing relationship at the time and thought it was a good idea for me to have my own place so we can work things out. It's kind of a move. I basically told my buddy I wasn't going to re-sign our lease for another year and he needed to figure it out, which he did. But ironically, I stayed living in the same apartment complex, just in a single bedroom. Now you would think after all the wild ish we've experienced in this apartment complex, I'd move to a new location, right? Yeah, well, something was telling me I needed to stay here in this community. And so I did. I also realized it didn't matter where I lived, they would follow. I'll give you the short version. After moving into a single bedroom, my relationship with my ex just went downhill fast. We fought every day, and after about 4 months, she just left. The tension was high, and honestly, I was over it. I needed my space just to figure things out. About a year later, I met someone new. We became good friends and slowly started building a deep friendship, and over the next year, it would eventually lead to us dating. A year after that, we married and had our youngest son together. More stories to come about all those paranormal experiences. But anyways, we were dating now. And I was honest about all the creepy things I've experienced in my last apartment, and I shared all the stories growing up on Lado Center Lane. But she didn't believe me. And that's okay, because most people never believe me. That's why it took 37 years to finally share all these stories with you. But as our relationship grew, we spent more and more time together, and eventually, she started staying over. It was nice having someone to do things with. And after a few months of quote-unquote dating, we decided to make it official. Now, things were still happening in my apartment. The usual things disappearing or being moved. I'd hear walking in the living room at 2 a.m. when I lived alone. I'd walk into my apartment and the energy just felt off. Sometimes lights would turn on and off by themselves, things like that. But for whatever reason, it never happened while my new girlfriend was here in the apartment. Now, my girlfriend's grandma wasn't doing well. Her health was deteriorating rapidly the last few months. It was a normal Saturday night, and my girlfriend came over, and we were just hanging out as usual, watching Netflix and eating whatever I made for dinner that night. Yeah, I cook and even clean. Yep, I was definitely a catch. Just kidding. The mood was a little sad since my girlfriend was worried about her grandma. She loved her deeply. She played such a huge role in her life. I just tried to keep the tone light and just comfort her. Now, what happened next was a little foggy for me. While my girlfriend was in the bathroom, or maybe she dozed off on the couch, I received a call from my girlfriend's mom. I'm saying it's foggy because I don't remember how I took the call without her noticing. But I knew it wasn't a good thing for her mom to be calling me. So I answered the phone. Hello? Hi, it's Mary. Is my daughter there with you? Yeah, she's here right now. Okay, good. Can you make sure she stays with you tonight? Wait, what? What's going on? I responded. Her grandma isn't doing well. They aren't sure she's gonna make it through the night. So I don't want her to be alone if something should happen. I didn't really know what to say, but I said I'd ask her to stay the night. And she did. We eventually went to bed. I had a hard time going to sleep. I just felt this overwhelming feeling of grief and loss. What's weird about it is I felt like I was grieving for my own grandparents or something. That's the only way I can explain it. My intuition's pretty strong, and sometimes I could just feel other people's sadness, grief, or pain. I don't know how to really explain it, other than they're not my internal emotions coming from within me, but I still feel them. Like I feel sorrow, but don't have anything that would trigger that feeling or emotion, but yet here it is. I just learned to accept I may be feeling someone else's emotions. It's gonna reveal whose emotions they are at a later time. And then my girlfriend woke up and asked, "Hey, are you okay?" I wasn't really sure what to say other than, I'm just having a hard time going to sleep. And then I blurted out, your phone's gonna ring. I'm sorry for your loss. She was so confused. What are you talking about? And then her phone started ringing. She looked at me and then looked at her phone and then back at me, almost scared. Like I knew she was thinking, the fuck is going on? And then she answered the phone. Hi Mom, why are you calling so? What? I'm sorry Mija, your grandma just passed away. What? When? About 20 minutes ago. My girlfriend started sobbing uncontrollably, and after a few minutes ended the call with her mom. She turned around and hugged me. I just held her. I didn't really have the words to comfort her, so I just let her cry for the next hour. I eventually got her to lay back down and try to get some rest. And so we both lay down, and just as I was about to close my eyes, I felt her turn towards me. She said, "How did you know my phone was gonna ring?" I don't even know how to explain it, but I sometimes hear phones ring before they do. I just knew it was about to ring. So why did you say sorry for your loss? You knew, didn't you? You knew it was about my grandma. How did you know my grandma passed away? How did you know my grandma passed away? I stayed silent for a few moments, debating whether I should answer. And so I looked into her eyes and I said, because I saw her standing in the corner of the room, in the corner of the room, in the corner of the room. After that night, my girlfriend never doubted me when I talked about my paranormal experiences. I still don't understand why I could hear the phones ringing before it actually did. Sometimes I think the signal frequency somehow affected me and I could just hear it. I don't know, it's something that just happened to me when I was a teenager all the way into just a few years ago. But I knew that phone call was going to be a difficult conversation, and I just tried to be there for her. It was a tough, long night filled with pain, her crying, and us not sleeping. I'm not sure how to feel about seeing her grandma. I didn't know her, and yet she showed herself to me. Actually, while attending the funeral was the first time I actually saw her, and I knew instantly from looking at the photos placed around the church that it was her grandma who visited that night. Honestly, I don't enjoy seeing people who passed. It leaves me deeply unsettled. But I don't get to choose who shows themselves to me. But what I do remember is her grandma looking at us with love in her eyes, like she was happy to see her granddaughter was happy. And then she looked at me, smiled, and disappeared. And that was the last time I ever saw her grandma. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Raker'z Dozen True Paranormal Stories.